Ego Eye Opener, excavating the hidden truth.
Mama Nigeria, Mrs. Nkasiobi Oko, President, Mothers Union, Women's Guild, Stroke Girls Guild, Church of Nigeria, Anglican Communion, Mama Dean, Mrs. Mary Lamido, Provincial Presidents, Diocesan Presidents, all Mothers Union officials, beloved sisters in Christ. Let me start by thanking Mama Nigeria and my very own Mama in Israel, Mrs. Patience Ide, for giving me the opportunity to give this health talk. May God bless your ministries in Jesus' name. Next. So today we're going to talk about our ears and how to care for them. We're going to talk about a very important part of our ears, like the person that introduced the talk said, our ears and why and how we take care of them. Why are the ears so important to us? Next slide. Let me start this presentation with a quote from the Bible. Matthew 11 verse 15 says, Jesus was saying that he that had ears to hear, let him hear. Okay? So we're going to first of all start by looking at it from another angle, because we can argue here that Jesus was talking figuratively. But now I'm going to look at it literally. That means that if you have ears, you're supposed to hear with them. True or false? Now this implies that there are some people that do not hear with their ears. So we're going to look at some of the reasons that make people not to hear with their ears. We want to take care of our own ears to make sure we don't damage our own ears. Because I keep on telling people that word, prevention is better than cure, is never more important than when you're talking about the health of your ears. Because once your ears are damaged, they are almost permanently damaged at that stage. So we need to learn how to prevent damage today. Every human being has two ears by the sides of the head, in the skull, in the head. And the ears serve several purposes apart from just for you to hear with it. It serves for balance. We may talk a bit about balance later. It also beautifies the body. When you know that the ears are important for beauty is when a child is born without the external ears. The ears are so unique. I'm going to be very brief about this because I'm not teaching doctors. But you should know that there's an outer ear, there's a middle ear, and there's an inner ear. Now, God has created the ear in such a unique way that all parts of the ear develop at different times. So the inner and the middle ear may be fully developed in a child, but the outer ear is absent. So we have seen children born without outer ear, but they can hear well. So that is where the beauty comes in. Then, of course, I'm talking to ladies, and you understand that you normally beautify the ear with ornaments. Okay? So with all that, we know that the ear too has its own aesthetic value. Next slide. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the most important part to me. The most important thing in talking about ear care, noise. Effect of noise in the ear. One of the easiest things to damage the ear is noise. Usually there's a maximum amount of noise we should all be exposed to. We shouldn't be exposed to more than 85 to 90 decibels of noise in a day and for 8 hours. That is for most countries in standard. And this is about the noise we hear in traffic. That's about 85 decibels. But most people are exposed to noise levels higher than this. If I sit down by that speaker, the noise that comes out from that speaker is about 140 decibels. Between 120 to 140. Sorry, I'm not trying to scare you, but that's a fact. If I take a noise level meter there and measure it, I'm going to get about 120 decibels. So the length of time you're exposed to that kind of noise will cause damage to your ear. A lot of time, It could be permanent. I remember recently in church, I saw one of the band members. She was backing her baby in her back. And she was just sitting there by the band. She was standing there by the band singing. And they were, the band, boo, 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 boo. Piano was there, organ was there, band, drum set was there. She was shouting and she was backing the child. I wanted to snap it so that I would put it in this kind of presentation, but I said that's not fair. So I went to whisper to her. I said, Madam, please, you are making this your child deaf. Yes, because in a short while, that child, in by 1-2 years, they start moving from one hospital to the other. My child cannot hear. But you forget that it is that day that you kept, because children cannot control the amount of noise that goes into their ear. You as an adult, if the noise is too much, you can walk away. But this one, the mother just backed the child. And the noise was just hitting the child. So I told her, I said, please, go and drop your child with someone. Then you can come back and continue with the gospel, whatever. So those are the kind of noises you can be exposed to. I tell people when I teach about this, I tell them that even if you are in a church, for example, when I walk into a church, first of all, I try to locate where the speakers are. And I try to choose a position in between. And I also tell them, I said, what it stops you after some time, if you feel the noise is hitting your ear, to take a walk. If it's for 5 minutes, let your ears breathe a bit. Then you come back again. Because there are 3 cardinal things that make noise affect the ear. One is closeness to the sound. And that's why I'm going to talk about headphones. I'm going to talk about smartphones. Smartphones cause deafness. So, because the smartphone and the headphone is just by your tympanic membrane and the noise is just going there. So, the closeness to the duration. That's why I said that in industries, they say that you shouldn't be exposed for more than 8 hours a day, 85 to 90 decibels. So, the length of time, like somebody walks into a crusade, or these young people, they go into a nightclub, and the guy goes and he's just seated by the speaker there for 5 hours. It's just boo, 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 boo in the ear. By the time he goes out, the whole head is ringing. It's like the generator is humming inside his head. The ear is already undergoing some damage. Then, of course, so is the closeness, the loudness, and the amount of time you are exposed to it. Okay? So, these days, a lot of technology has come up. So they try not to use the word deaf. Because ideally speaking, if you have a lot of money, they can even produce the middle ear. It's called a cochlear implant. But it will cost about 12 million for that. Yeah, so a cochlear implant costs about 12 million. So they try to remove that word deaf because they can almost do everything. But how many people can afford 12 million for a cochlear implant? So that's why we are going to have this talk and go away from this meeting with a lot of knowledge that we are going to impart in our various provinces in Jesus' name and dioceses. In 27 February 2015, the WHO issued a press statement that about 1.1 billion teenagers and adults were at risk of hearing loss. Because you see our youths these days, WHO said they live in a noise-induced world. You see them with that headphone they are holding. They are making themselves deaf. I'm being practical. I've seen so many parents come to my clinic. And when I've seen 13-year-olds deaf, 14, 15-year-olds, they cannot hear. And so the next question I ask is, does your son use a headphone? Oh, I've been telling you since. One of them almost slapped the boy in my clinic. I've been shouting about this headphone. So they live with these headphones, and these headphones just live in a noise-induced world. And all the headphones keep on doing is making them deaf gradually. In fact, it was so bad. I'm going to see some projection that WHO did. They said that in about 10 years' time, they listed the volume of youths that would be deaf. They listed a number of youths that they were expecting that because of, except there is a lifestyle change. Because you find that even the smartphone you're using can make you go deaf. I noticed after some time, because I was always answering my phone with my right ear, I noticed I wasn't hearing too well. Because I'm always on the phone. And many times you will increase the volume of the phone. So I found I couldn't hear, and I was like, what is happening? What is happening? So I quickly started answering calls on my left ear, and I reduced the volume. And what I did too was I tried to put on speaker as often as I can. If it's not a confidential discussion, I just put it on speaker, and it makes it easier for me, and I can talk with the person. And after some time, I found I could hear a bit. The hearing improved in the other ear. A lady, healthy-looking young lady, she was a local government, a lady. Yes, a lady, she was the vice chairman, can you hear me now? Of a local government. She had an infection and went into, she had surgery. And after the surgery, she had infection. And so part of the management was they gave her gentamicin injection, antibiotics. 2 days later, she couldn't hear anything. And she was completely deaf. So drugs like gentamicin, there are even so many other drugs. So you need to ask your doctor, please, I hope these drugs don't. Quinine. Nobody should touch quinine because quinine causes deafness. A lot of children have been made deaf with quinine. So we call them ototoxic drugs. Now, these are drugs you watch out for and make sure you don't have contact with them so that you don't have adverse effect. Okay, it's good for you to check regularly. You can go and do what we call an audiometry test. Check your hearing to make sure your hearing is normal. Okay, maybe I didn't plan for it. Something like this kind of meeting, someone can just come and do a hearing screening, and that way a number of people can check their hearing and be sure that they're on the safe side. So maybe that's something we'll think of in the future. But it's possible. Then, of course, I've talked about captioning, where you're watching movies and all that. Next slide. In 2013, it was projected that by WHO that 466 million people will be deaf. Then in 2030, they projected that 630 million people will be deaf. And by 2050, their projection is that 900 million people will be deaf. This is just about lifestyle. We are in a technological age where lifestyles have changed. And you now find everybody, you see people along the street that are wearing these big headphones. When they go home, they put the Bluetooth. When they go, they take it off. So all that while, they're damaging their ears. And incidentally, the cheapest hearing aid you can buy is about $1,000. That's about $350,000. So when you talk about the 2 ears, that's about $700,000 for the 2 ears. So that is the kind of statistics, scary statistics we are facing for the future if we don't change our lifestyle. So it's very important that we do a lot of advocacy like we're doing today on how people can take care of the health of their ears. Next. So we want government to allocate resources for health care. We also want to train hearing care professionals. People should have access to technologies, and people should be able to regulate their sound exposure. So if you're going to take only one thing away from this meeting, know that you are going to regulate how you are going to expose yourself to sound. If there's just one thing you take away from all this plenty talk I'm going to talk today, that you're going to regulate your exposure to sound. So the theme was actually hear the future and prepare for it. So the theme of the World Hearing Day last year was hear the future and prepare for it. Because it's how you want your future to be is going to be. By the time you expose yourself to a lot of noise, you know that in the future, deafness is waiting for you. You see, people like those days when you talk about, I better pass my neighbor, you put, I better pass my neighbor, then you think you are oppressing your neighbor. You are killing yourself at the end of the day. Because it's just going to make you deaf on the long run. So we advise people, if you have a generator, if you cannot afford a soundproof, if you can't afford a soundproof gen, your generator should be as far away from your house as possible. Okay? Keep it very far away, because apart from the fumes, you're also exposing yourself to noise. So those are the little advice we give. Next slide. Now, how do you know you're having... Next slide. What are the warning signs that you are having problems with hearing? In fact, at the time I had to start asking myself that I hope my own hearing is not being affected, because I found I was always asking people to repeat themselves. So I had to quickly go and do a hearing test. So when you keep on asking people to repeat themselves, there's a problem somewhere. Not the same person. What did you just say? What did you say? You keep on telling people to repeat what themselves. You have difficulty hearing conversation in the presence of background noise. You misunderstand what people say. Somebody is saying something else, you are answering another thing. Difficulty hearing on the phone. You keep on telling the person, talk louder, talk louder. You finish that phone call, another person is talking again, you are still shouting, talk louder. Only you. How many people? So you find that there's a problem somewhere. Then you get into it, everybody is watching TV, everybody is comfortable. Yeah, this thing is so low, you people should increase this volume. Now those are signs that there's a problem somewhere. Next slide. Now you feel people are talking too low, difficulty in hearing environmental sounds. People are talking, you don't understand what they say, so you just nod and smile as if you understand, as if you're hearing what they say, but you're not. You're withdrawing from conversation, social situation, straining to hear or keep up with conversation, noise within your ear. Our own dear president too. I'm sure some of you watched the candidates recently. Yes, so a lot of people were talking about all kinds of medical conditions. I will not call the names. But you see that most of it had to do with hearing. It had to do with, what did you say? What did you say? You know? And even the misrepresentations were not so much, for me, were not so much of a medical condition, but were like he did not hear. So when you ask a question and somebody starts answering something else, it's not because he has dementia. It's probably because he did not hear. I'm not the one that said dementia. But probably because he didn't hear what you said. So those are signs that the person is not hearing very well. Now, what do you do when you suspect that you have a problem with your hearing? One, you want to consult an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. At home or work, you wear hearing protection devices. There are earplugs and earmuffs you can wear that can reduce the amount of noise. In fact, there were some they actually did for people like Okada riders. Now, because, the noise they were getting. But then, too, it was going to expose them to not even hearing somebody coming behind and all that. So they did some special ones that could shut out background noise, but they could still hear certain noises. So you want to protect your ears. Then there's this teaching about cranking it down. Now, what does that mean, cranking it down? We've all been in situations in your car. You are in your car and you are driving along, and suddenly there's this music you like a lot comes on. As it comes on, the natural instinct is to increase the volume, but you should actually do the opposite. So what they now teach is crank it down. So you reduce the volume rather than stretching forward to increase it. We talked about medications, then we talked about exposure to loud noises. That if you're in a concert or in church, at times your ears need to recover. Nothing stops you from stepping outside for 5 minutes or so, and you come back, and just to allow your ears to rest. Oh, we all know all these things. Can we add some? Can we suggest some more to put? Is feather there? Feather is not there. Okay, so we add feather. What else? Stick. Okay. Okay, good. Oh, beautiful. Matches is a good one. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. I can even add some. I've seen somebody use super glue. Super glue. Key. And the thing is that the ear is so funny that when you are doing it, there's one tinklish sweet sensation. And you'll be doing it, you don't know how far you are going. Until maybe some people will now hear, boom. That boom is that you have punctured the eardrum. It happens a lot. I've seen so many of it. So many, I can't count. But I'm going to tell you something strange today. And that thing is that the only thing you're allowed to put inside your ear is your elbow. Yes? That is the only thing you're allowed to put inside your ear. So answer the question yourself. So what I'm implying is that nothing enters the ear. I will try to give time for questions, because I know the first question that will come is, so what do we use to itch our ears? That is itching us. Nothing enters the ear. The ear is a self-cleansing organ. I have a lot of grandmothers here, and normally when I see a young wedded couple and they're coming with the kid, the first thing is the ear has some discharge and soap, because there's a way grandmothers used to clean the ear. They will put water and do it like this and do it like this. I've seen some of them do it, and it causes some chemical reaction. So I always tell the lady, I say, go and be very polite to your mother-in-law. Tell that doctor say they shouldn't clean this, or your mother, they shouldn't allow water enter your baby's ear. What you should do, you can clean the outer part with a towel, a moist towel. Just clean the outer part, but nothing should go inside the ear. The ear cleans itself out. What happens if you have a lot of wax? Because not everybody has wax. I'm sure for over 40 years I've not put anything in my ear. Yes, not put anything in my ear for over 40 years. And most people are like that. But what are the people that have wax? Those ones will need to see a specialist. I will talk a bit more when it comes to questions if I get to that side. So all these plenty things. And incidentally, that young man I said that was cleaning the ear with super glue. The cover of the super glue fell inside the ear. The young man was about 17 years. So they went to a private clinic. The man tried to pull out the super glue cover, couldn't, pushed it in a bit further. They went to this time a consultant, but it was a general practitioner, a GP. That one took them to the theater, gave drugs, the boy slept. He started trying to remove it, until after some time he stopped seeing the cover. The cover had gone right inside. So by the time they got to my clinic, I couldn't even see the cover at all. So I had to take to the theater. And in such situations, what we do usually is that we go from the back. So I would have had to cut the ear completely, open it up. We call it a posterior tympanotomy. Open it up, then go and pick it out from behind. But luckily for the young man, I just said, let me just try going in from the ear. And I went in blindly. And the first thing I picked was the cover. So the cover just came out without having to open from behind. Because it was practically a blind procedure. I wasn't seeing where I was going, so it was just lucky. So these are dangers that can happen from putting things in our ears. I will surprise you again with another thing before we leave this slide. Cotton buds are not for use in the ears. They have no business with the ears. Some people even call them earbud. Now, amongst us here, a lot of us travel regularly. Go to Walmart or go to Spa or Tesco. Now, look for what you call cotton bud. Just look for it. You are going to see boldly written on it, not for use in the ears. Boldly, so that you can even see it from far. Not for use in the ears. But some people call it earbud, and their daily cleaning routine is not complete until they will say, when I come bath, when I bath finish, I can't use cotton bud, I can't clean my ear. But it has no business in the ears, because you can damage the ear canal, you can damage the eardrum, it can become a foreign body in your ear. I remember a 65-year-old man came to me. In fact, when I gave this talk somewhere, I gave an example of a venerable. So I won't use the example of that venerable today. Let me give the example of a 65-year-old man who came to my clinic, and he could not hear at all. So when I looked at him, he was a retiree. My first thought was age-induced hearing loss. And I said, sir, you know, these things come with age and all that. But second thought, I just said, let me just look. Why are you talking? You've not even looked at his ear. You are talking. When I looked at his ear, I thought I saw cotton bud there. eventually, by the time I finished with him, the right ear had 3 cotton buds. The left ear had 2. Only one man had 5 cotton buds in his ear. And he was walking about, not even aware that, as you know, these ones they sell for, is it 20 naira or 15 naira along the hold up. When you do it like this, boom, this thing will come out, the thing will stay inside. And the man was moving about with 5 cotton buds in his ear, and he did not know. And so I've seen somebody else with 4. I've seen that 5 like 2 times. You know? So the venerable I used to give an example came. I saw 4 inside his ear. 2 on one, 2 on the other one. So this is why we say people shouldn't use cotton buds. Cotton buds have no place in the ear. So if you take another thing away from this lecture, it is that cotton buds have no place in the ear. Next slide. So this is what I talked about, that the ear is a self-cleansing organ. It does not need any active cleaning. The ear only needs to be cleaned from the outside. Wipe the outer ear with a washcloth or tissue. Don't put anything smaller than your elbow into your ears. Do not use cotton buds and all that. Wax itself has a protective function in the ear. So at times I see a little bit of wax in people's ear. Even my wife comes and looks at my kids, hey, there's wax in this one. So I say, leave it. It will fall off by itself. If it doesn't fall off, then there's a way, but it has a function on its own. So, but then a lot of people secrete excess wax. So what happens when they secrete excess wax? It should be removed by a specialist. Okay? There are ways the specialist will take it out. There's this story I've told before. Maybe 1 or 2 persons would have heard me say when I presented it here. I talked about a woman, an elderly woman. She was in her 80s or almost 90. And she was like the head woman in her village or something like that. So the kids were so concerned she couldn't hear. And they brought her to my clinic. But she was almost 90. And they said, Mama cannot hear. So I looked at her, a very elderly woman. I just jokingly told the son, I was like, what does Mama want to hear that she has not heard before in this life? You know? So we all laughed. And the son was like, no, that a lot of young women have problems, marital problems and all that, and advice. And that when they come to talk to Mama, Mama feels bad and now she cannot hear them. So I started talking about age-related. The same thing, I was like, look at this woman's ear. Why are you talking first? So I looked at her ear, and the 2 ears were completely blocked with wax. But I didn't quickly feel it was the wax. So I told the son, I said, Mama's ears are completely blocked. We are going to try to take out the wax. It may be the cause of her deafness. I don't want to raise your hopes unnecessarily. But if it is the cause of, because beyond the wax, she may have another problem. I said, so, but we're going to take it out and see how she responds. So we started the procedure. Suddenly, by the time one of the ears, the wax came out, the next thing we heard was, praise the Lord. Mama could hear. And by the time I finished taking off the wax, Mama could hear perfectly. She was very happy. She prayed for me and everything. She was excited. So that is what impacted wax can do. Okay? But like I said, that should not make you start cleaning your ear regularly. Because that what we call wax formers. If you're a wax former, wax is going to accumulate in your ear. And when it does, you need to seek specialist care to take care of them. Okay? Next slide. Okay, so with wax, you can present with a sense of impaired hearing in your blocked ear. Do not use cotton buds. Do not use fingers or towels in your ear. There are no proven ways to prevent wax. I remember there was a time I traveled and I saw something that against wax, one ointment. But I don't think those are things that are on trial. I think I bought 1 or 2, but I don't know whether they worked or not. So, but for those that form wax, you should be seeing an ENT specialist at least every 6 months or every year to check your ears. Next slide. Okay, this is how we flush. We get wax out of the ear syringing. Next slide. Okay, good. Foreign bodies in the ear. This mainly affects children. So those of us that still have little children, we have to be very careful what we leave lying around them. I will just digress and talk about the nose, because the nose is also very important for foreign bodies. Children put a lot of things in their nose. It becomes an emergency because that can kill. Just popcorn. I've seen a child die from popcorn. Yes, I had to take that child twice into the theater. I was looking for popcorn in the lungs. Yes, I had to go into the lungs to look for popcorn. Eventually, we had felt the popcorn had dissolved and all that. The child was in respiratory distress, and so the child died. In fact, I made sure my children never saw popcorn till they were about 5 or 6 years. In fact, the first time they gave the popcorn in school, their mates were seeing popcorn for the first time, because I deliberately kept them away from popcorn after that experience I had. You shouldn't make, those that have daughters, you shouldn't make your children's hair with beads. Don't make their hair with beads. That bead can end up in the nose, can end up in the ear, can end up in the mouth. So I advise not to use beads in making children's hair. So most of these, I mean, there was one, but in the ear, it's not so much of an emergency, because unlike in the nose where it can go into the lungs, because it can go two ways. The child can swallow it. If it goes into the stomach, it will pass it out as stool. If it goes into the airway, could be fatal, like the one I saw. So we now have to go into the airway. At times we've gone into the airway and we brought out groundnut seed from inside the lungs. A piece of groundnut seed from inside the lungs. So those are things you consider when you're talking about children. Leaving them unattended is very... I wish I had brought some x-rays of patients I've taken to the theater. Scary x-rays. Remove key and all that with the key holder down there. Yes, I've done that in this town. A 2-year-old, we removed the key from right within the chest. So we have to be very careful. I'm digressing about foreign bodies, because foreign bodies are very important for children. But like I said earlier, in the ear, it's not too much of an emergency, except if it's a living foreign body, which we'll talk about shortly. I know of a young man that came. He was about 30 years, and he said he had his tooth in his ear for about, he was almost 40 years, for about 30-something years. And we said, what? He said, remember that when he was a child, that they changed his teeth. When his teeth fell off, they told him that if you put it inside the ear, it will grow back again. So we told him, I said, you put it in your ear? He said, yes. And lo and behold, when we looked, the tooth was there. But they had not done anything to him for over 20-something years. You know, so most of the time you can take out your time and take it out. But if it's a living creature, then so adults that put foreign bodies are cotton bud, matchstick. So somebody helped us with matchstick that time, Abi. So when you are doing the matchstick, you don't make pakan. When it breaks like that, it becomes a foreign body in the ear. The cotton bud, it goes off, the other part stays inside. Then psychiatric patients, those ones can put pins, put nails and all that. But we're not talking about that now. So the cockroaches can enter the ear. Yes. Because people lie down. See how I'm sweating now. Somebody may, hey, my house is so hot. It will let me go and take breeze outside. Or even in your house, you put something and lie down on the floor. If Aso Rock has rats, why won't people have cockroach in their house? Yes. So people have cockroaches in their hello. People have cockroaches in their house. So the cockroach is moving about quietly on his own. There's no light. He will see a small hole, dark hole. He will enter inside. Next slide. Okay, so there's something children can put. Next slide. Yeah, so you can see cockroach inside the second person's ear. And I've removed cockroach plenty times. Plenty. In fact, one that I removed, the woman said I should pack it for her. I said, madam, why? He said, my pastor must see this. I said, Madam, your pastor does not need to see this, so I have removed plenty cockroach. Oh. He said, no, that I should pack it for her. So I packed the cockroach I gave her. But seriously speaking, cockroaches are things we see in the ear. So what are we going to learn at this meeting? About 2 days ago, somebody called me in the night, around 12 midnight, that the daughter had an insect in the ear. Yes, it happens. It could be an insect, it could be cockroach, it could be whatever. So you want to kill the insect. You don't try to take it out. So how do you kill it? If you have methylated spirit in the house, just pour methylated spirit in the house, inside the ear, and it kills it instantly. Then the child can sleep. Then in the morning you can go to hospital. But if you don't have methylated spirit, you can use olive oil. But olive oil will take a longer time because you're trying to drown the insect. So you can use olive oil, you can use turpentine, but the best thing you can use is methylated spirit. So when you do that, you now send to a specialist in the morning to take it out. Yeah, so things you can do too when you have cough, catarrh and all that, because the ear, the nose and the throat, they have a meeting point. So when you have cough, catarrh, upper respiratory tract infections, they can go ahead and affect your ears. So you don't take them lightly. You should make sure you take care of your health. If somebody is seeing fluid coming out from the ear, it's not normal. You need to see a specialist. If there's itching or pain in your ear, you need to see a specialist. When you are in a plane, when you are in a flight, particularly at takeoff, the pressure changes very fast. So you have this part of the body we call the eustachian tube. It equalizes pressure between the atmosphere and the middle ear. So it finds it difficult catching up with the change. So at that point in time, if you are one of those affected by this, you should be chewing gum. If you're sitting with someone that you know, you should be discussing, active discussion. Because what happens is that the more your jaw opens, the faster it works. So you strike up an active discussion, or you use an earplug and you'll be chewing gum. Then if you have catarrh before a flight, I've experienced it myself and it's not funny. Your ears will almost want to explode on the flight when you are going up or when you are coming down. So you can even stop at the airport if it's an international flight and look for loratadine. It's like Sinufed. It's on over the counter. So you take it. If before you leave the house that morning, you make sure you take something for the catarrh. You can take Sinufed, you can take loratadine. Treat yourself for the catarrh. Then on the flight, you will be with gum. You'll be chewing your gum all the time because your eardrums can actually explode on the flight. Yes, because your eustachian tube will not function at all. So the pressure will build up to a stage where you just hear poof, and some people it has happened to them and they bleed. So those are the little things you can do when you are on a flight, when you are descending or when you are ascending. So let me just talk a bit. I'll probably conclude with this. Then we can ask questions. My time is almost up. Multiple ear piercings amongst our young ladies. To be discouraged completely. Now, when the ear is pierced at about the age of, is it 1 month or 2 months that they normally pierce when the child is still very little. Now, if the child is prone to forming a keloid, it will not form a keloid at that stage. But when they now get older, get into the university, and they now want to start adding more holes like their friends, the one that has a propensity to form keloid does not know. And by the time she does it, you just see this huge, next slide. You see these huge, ugly scars. In fact, that one is a small one. This was after we had operated on it. So occasionally they don't go to the right specialists, they go to the wrong people and they cut off everything. So what comes out is bigger than what they cut off. But there's a way we normally do it. The specialists would leave a bit of it, they will give injections, but they don't do that. So they keep on doing that until the thing is as huge as this and looks very ugly. So it's important that people know that multiple ear piercings are to be completely discouraged amongst young ladies. Next slide. So let me conclude that Unlike the rest of our bodies, the ears, they are quite pretty easy to maintain in a healthy state if you know the right things to do. Prevention is better than cure. We started by saying that, we started the presentation by talking about prevention is better than cure. So we all need to take away all these tips I've talked about in mind to keep our ears in excellent shape. Next slides. So now let me talk figuratively. He that had ears, let him hear. Thank you for listening to me.
I want to say a very big thank you for your erudite lecture. My question is, sir, you've taught us everything. And I want to find out, when our ears are itching, what do you advise us to use in itching the ear? Because naturally it does itch. Thank you, sir.
Praise the Lord. Doctor, we thank God for the grace he has given to you, and we did enjoy all that you have taught us. But my question is, I have a nephew who was sick and was given injection, I was told. And since that time, he could not hear again. We have tried, even looking for hearing enhance, but it's not working. Right now, he has even finished his NCE, but I wish he can still talk. He can write, can tell you everything, even on phone, everything, but to speak as I'm doing. What can you say about it?
A doctor, please. When children have this whitish substance coming out of their ear, I don't know I don't know if it is pus, and then you see the child crying and crying and crying, and has been to hospital, come back, still the problem persists. What do we do?
Thank you very much. All the questions were very important. In fact, the first question is almost the first. I laughed because that's about the first question I always get when I make a presentation like this. Your ear is itching. What do you do? What we advise you to do is just don't, this outer part, just do that. If it's really, really itching and something like this does not help you, then you may need to see a specialist. Then in that case, the person, even if it's just something that will stop the itching, something like Sinofed or something like Loratine that can stop the itching, is better than putting things into your ear. You know why? Let me just tell you a bit about my training. I spent 6 years to read MBBS to get my first degree. Then I did housemanship, youth service. I spent another 7 years to specialize. And I probably have been a consultant now for about 12, 13 years. So, but let me just look at the 7 years I used in specializing. That 7 years, I was looking at the ear, nose, and throat for 7 years. I was specializing. But you notice one thing about ENT doctors. They never put anything in your ear without light. There is like a hunter's headlight we normally wear. Now, that headlight shows us where we're going. So, if I spend 7 years looking at the ear, that means I know the in and out of the ear. I know the length of the ear canal. I know the width. I know where there is a bend. But even with all this knowledge, I still don't put anything in your ear without light. So how come a layman, let me not use the word novice, you are just putting the thing there, you don't even know where you are going, you don't even know the length, the distance that you are putting it in the first place, that I know where I will stop, and you just be doing it and be doing it and be doing it, a blind procedure. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make? So just look at both scenarios. So you cannot put in something blindly into your ear and say that you're not going to cause some damage. That's why we discourage it. Your nephew was given an injection and can no longer hear. So sad about, so sorry about that. The injection could have been maybe quinine or gentamicin or one of those. Was he talking before the injection? Beautiful. So that is why he was able to finish school, because he has what we call postlingual deafness. Postlingual deafness means you could hear, you could talk, you could speak before you became deaf, which is easier to manage than prelingual deafness. Prelingual deafness means the person never learnt speech before he became deaf. Your nephew seems to be like a typical candidate of what we call a cochlear implant. What I talked about at the beginning is a range of maybe about 5 million to 12 million, depending on where you do it. So what they do for such people is they give them a new inner ear. It's housed in an electronic whatever. They do a surgery and give them a new inner ear. And many of them do well with a cochlear implant. He most likely will not even benefit from hearing aids. But it's good to give a hearing aid trial. Now, what substance from the ear, whitish substance, is difficult to say. Whitish substance will make me start thinking of a fungal infection of the ear. Fungal infections in the ear are quite common. They're quite common from bath water. From children swimming in infected pools. So when they swim in infected pools, the fungus goes into the ear and starts growing in the ear. And it's usually whitish, it itches a lot, brings out a lot of discharge. And the funny thing is that most medical doctors cannot even recognize it. So they keep on giving antibiotics, and it never seems to go. Until you use the appropriate antifungal agents, it's there. But whitish stuff seems to suggest a fungal infection. So probably the person should see a specialist and it will be appropriately managed. And talking about fungal infections just reminds me a bit about us being careful about hand washing. I'll just end with this. There was I was in a hospital and a young lady came with fungal infection. She had fungal infection of the 2 ears. Bad infection. And so I flushed her ears. I syringed the ears and a lot of fungus came out. Plenty fungus. And so when I left the place, there's an ATM machine outside the place. So I said, okay, I needed some cash. I said, let me stop and pick up some money from the ATM. And lo and behold, when I got to the ATM, the person that was in front of me was the young lady I just finished attending to. And so while she was waiting to use the ATM, I saw her do like this. She did like this, she did like this. I was just watching. Then when she finished, she now went to the ATM and started pressing. I just walked away, I left. I didn't collect money again that day. But you see, anybody would have walked in there after she finished pressing the key cord and she had transferred so much fungus all over the ATM, and you now do the whole thing. When you finish, you yourself will now start doing this one, and by next week you also have fungal infection. Thank you.